session.
The regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of Spring School District is officially called to order on Tuesday, January 18th, 2018. The time is now 7 o'clock p.m. Board of Trustees present are Winfred Adams Jr., Chris Bell, Deborah Jensen, Justine Durant, Jana Gonzalez, Don Davis, and myself, Rhonda Newhouse. I would like to ask everyone to turn off or silence their cell phones or electronic devices at this time. Thank you. I'd like to recognize Trustee Don Davis to introduce tonight's presentation of the colors.
Thank you, Madam President, my colleagues. Tonight, presentations of the color were led by Spring High School Lion Regiment. Commanding the color guards and carrying the United States flag is Cadet Chandler Bentley. Cadet Bentley has just received a nomination in the United States Navy Academy. Carrying the Texas flag, Commander Nicholas Lane. Cadet Lane have also received a nomination by the Navy Academy. Let's give them a hand for that. Those folks. Being Prime Military, I would say congratulations to both of you young men. The right guard is Cadet Chief Simon Foster Smith and Kyle Shield. They will also lead the pledge as well. Spring High School Lion Regiment is under Director Captain James Boyer, Senior Chief Joseph Reynolds, Gunny Sergeant Audrey Gilchrist, Chief Douglas Watson, and Chief Martin Horner. This time, everyone please rise. Once the pledge is complete, please remain standing. Thank you.
Order. March. Order. Halt. Three, then. Call.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Air, read. Color. Ready. Cut. Color guard. Move. Post the colors. Forward. March. Post. Colors. Ready. Cut. Freeze. Set. March. Order. March. Ready. Cut. Color guard. Face. Forward. March.
Madam President, this is not the original team for inclement weather. Let's give them a hand.
At this time, I'd like to ask those present to please quietly observe a moment of silence in your own way. Thank you. You may now be seated. For our next item, I would like to recognize our Chief of Staff, Julie Hill.
Good evening, Madam President, Superintendent Watson, and other Board of Trustee members. January is Board Appreciation Month, and we have two proclamations that will be presented to the board tonight. The first is from the office of Harris County Precinct 4, Commissioner R. Jack Cagle. At this time, I would like to recognize Mr. Ken Klingerman and invite him to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to visit with you tonight. Again, my name is Kent Klingerman from Commissioner Jack Cagle's office at Harris County Precinct 4. He wanted me to visit with you all tonight and express his gratitude for all the blood, sweat, and tears you poured into this community, and especially the students of Spring ISD. And in front of you, all the trustees have a copy of a proclamation that Commissioner's prepared, and I'd like to read that on his behalf. The Honorable R. Jack Cagle hereby recognizes the trustees of the Spring Independent School District. As Precinct 4 Commissioner of Harris County, Texas, and on behalf of the citizens of Harris County, we offer our sincere gratitude for the compassion, guidance, and outstanding leadership you've provided within Spring Independent School District. Your hard work and dedication have made a significant impact on the lives of the children, families, and fellow educators in our community. Therefore, I hereby proclaim the month of January 2018 as School Board Recognition Month. That's signed Commissioner R. Jack Cagle, Harris County Precinct 4. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Please give our thank you to Commissioner Cagle as you leave. Thank you.
The second proclamation is from the office of Harris County Precinct 1, Commissioner Rodney Ellis. Unfortunately, a representative from Commissioner Ellis's office is unable to be with us this evening, but they have provided the proclamation, which I would like to present to the board on their behalf. The proclamation reads, whereas on behalf of the office of Harris County Commissioner Precinct 1, it is indeed a privilege to extend greetings in recognition of the Spring ISD Board of Trustees, honoring their hard work and dedication to education, and whereas in appreciation in your capacity, dedication, and tremendously notable contributions brought forth in making a positive difference for the benefit of area students and their families, we commend you for sharing your time and leadership abilities as an integral part of the district and community. And whereas it is a pleasure to thank you for your service and sacrifice for the benefit of our children and the community in general you service on the Spring ISD Board of Trustees, is indicative of your loyalty and commitment to serve, as well as your obvious contributions made through active involvements within the district. And whereas, in recognition as dedicated members in furtherance of education and community empowerment, it is an honor and a privilege to say thank you for all that you do to ensure quality education in a safe and supportive environment. Now, therefore, Harris County Commissioner Precinct 1 recognizes the commitment of caring individuals and organizations through its salute to the Spring ISD board members, and is hereby pleased to join in the observance of the 8 worthy Houstonians that comprise the Spring ISD Board of Trustees in honor of School Board Recognitions Month. Wanda Newhouse, President, Position 5. Jana Gonzalez, Vice President, Position 7. Donald Davis, Secretary, Position 6. Justine Durant, Assistant Secretary, Position 3. Dr. Deborah Jensen, Member, Position 1. Chris A. Bell, Member, Position 2. Winfred Adams Jr., Member, Position 4. Dr. Rodney E. Watson, Superintendent of Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill.
And we do have a copy of it, so we will make sure that we get it posted for you and framed.
Thank you. Our next item is the superintendent's remark. At this time, I'd like to recognize our superintendent of schools, Dr. Rodney Watson.
Thank you, President Newhouse and other trustees. As some of you in the audience may not know, we just celebrated a few minutes ago Board Appreciation Month, which is every January. I want to take an opportunity to publicly thank you all once again. It's a blessing, a privilege, and a pleasure to work with such a board that cares about kids. And so once again, I wanted to say thank you so much for all that you do, all of the volunteer hours that you do, and all of the coaching and support you provide for this district. So thank you so much. Some of you may not know as well that this week all parents and campus-based staff have received the email as well as a telephone call from me regarding our school quality survey. And we have asked all of our parents as well as our community members to complete the survey, which gives us vital information regarding how they feel our school is doing. It's important for them to let us know how they feel about their schools, their students' campus, and we use this feedback to help us really make changes in the district as we move forward. In addition to that, as we've promised, every month we provided information to you all regarding Everyday Counts, which is our attendance incentive. We know that it feels a little strange this month because we've been out of school for another couple of days, and so this year we feel like we've missed a lot of school time due to weather. And so attendance is something that's really critical for us. We will continue to monitor our attendance, as we know that's how we receive funding, through attendance and enrollment, and we will continue to provide you updates. In December at our principals meeting, we were able to provide our principals information regarding attendance rates across the district as well as year-to-date. We were very excited. Year-to-date attendance rates of nearly 98% was our spring early college. In addition to that, close behind them was Winship and Thompson Elementaries as well as Twin Creeks. And so we will continue to recognize and celebrate those schools that are making gains in their attendance. I also want to encourage all of our schools to keep up the hard work because we do have about 5 months left in this calendar year, and so we want to make sure that we're doing all that we can. I'm also pleased to announce that later this month we'll be holding our first drawing for our teacher incentive. You remember we presented that back to you all. It was actually a recommendation from one of the trustees that we begin looking at things like that. And so teachers that have missed no days during the first semester will be eligible to enter a drawing for up to $1,500. Right now we're finalizing the list of eligible teachers and preparing to hold the drawing later this month. This is going to be an exciting event as we're planning to announce the winners, so make sure you look on the website for a story indicating the drawing as well as who the winners were across the district. We also want to remind our teachers that if you did not meet the requirements for the first semester, it did start over for the second semester, so there's still opportunity to take part in this by not missing any days. One of the last things we want to talk about is the flu season. We know that the flu season is going around. We've actually seen stories on the news where individuals are passing as a result of the strain of flu that's going around, and so we want to encourage anyone. Of course, we want people to be at school because of attendance, but we also want people to take care of themselves and get a flu shot if they haven't already done so. We do know that they're still offering those within our community. Last but not least, last week we had the opportunity to have 2 individuals come and present information to you all regarding our new dual language program. This is an extremely exciting milestone for us, seeing that this is part of our strategic plan, Every Child 2020. As we were going through the development of that process and actually meeting with our community, that was one of the things our community wanted, was which was more opportunities and choice in dual language. And so we're excited about the possibility of getting ready to open our first Spanish dual language program in 3 of our schools. And so we will continue to open opportunities and choices for our families and reach those goals with your support. That concludes my report for today.
Thank you for that information, Dr. Watson. Next, I'd like to ask if we have any trustee that would like to make remarks. Mr.
I just
Davis?
mentioned a few minutes ago about the cadets from Spring High School, Navy ROTC that received nominations for Academy. I mentioned 2, but there's additional 2 more that's also nominated. We have 1 that was nominated for the United States Air Force Academy, and we have 3 that was nominated for the United States Navy Academy. So far, Spring Line program has 4 cadets nominated for Academy.
4. 4? Great.
I mentioned 2 and they got 2. Congratulations.
Yes.
That's downright amazing, yeah. I said, that is absolutely amazing.
I had an
Graham?
opportunity last week to attend a screening of a film entitled Paper Tigers. It's a film about the impact of what are called the ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. And I want to recommend to any of the board members, if you get an opportunity to view this film, public schools is one of the places where we have the opportunity to do an intervention that prevents the adverse outcomes that come from adverse childhood experiences from occurring.
has been mentioned, we had a board appreciation night tonight, and I just want to, one more time, tell the board that I appreciate you all. It's sometimes long hours, and I know of trustees who have come in not feeling well or put off other important engagements to participate in our activities because we all feel that this is so important. So thank you all.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Dr. Jensen, and as she indicated, we are very appreciative of our administrators and chief of staffs, chiefs that had the presentation earlier today for recognition to the board. It is our pleasure to serve, so we are very appreciative of your support and kindness in recognizing us. Please share that thank you with them. We will now continue with tonight's agenda. Our next item is the public hearing for the annual report of the district's performance and the Texas Academic Performance Report. At this time, I'd like to recognize Chief of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, Lauren Topat.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Watson, and Board of Trustees. This evening, we will be reviewing our Texas Academic Performance Report, known as our TAPER report. Just as a reminder, this is our annual report that TEA produces, and they do separate the data and report it by groups of students above, by ethnicity, economically disadvantaged, English language learner, and special education. We have 90 days from the day that TEA releases the TAPER report to have a public hearing, and as you can see, our TAPER report was released on November 16th, so we're within our 90 days, and this is our official public hearing on our data that comes with the TAPER report. The first piece of data that we're going to review is our enrollment by race and ethnicity. As you can see, Spring ISD is the middle donut circle, and on the left and right is Region 4 and the state. As much as possible, we've tried to show you a comparison, like last year, of our district to Region 4 and the state. And as you can see here, our district, similar to last year, has more African American and Hispanic students than Region 4 and the state. This is similar to last year, but with some slight fluctuations. In terms of our ethnic composition of our teachers, as you can see, our composition is on the left of our teachers, and on the right are our students. And so our African American population of teachers reflects that of our students. But as you can see, that's not as reflective for our white and Hispanic student populations. We began training on cultural proficiency with our school leadership office and our multilingual department, and HR has now picked up that training and has been conducting these professional developments. And as you can see, in terms of our teacher composition to our student composition, it's a very much needed training and an important topic that we do discuss with our teachers and staff. The next slide shows our percentage of economically disadvantaged students. You can see that we have more economically disadvantaged students in our district than that of Region 4 and the state. The next slide begins our data in terms of our STAR test and our end-of-course exam. Here, Spring is at the top, and Region 4 and the state are at the bottom. For Region 4 and the state on the bottom, the darker bars are going to be Region 4, and right up against them, the lighter color is the state. You can also see that this year we've added a red line that shows our internal 80% internal goal to meet minimum expectation. This helped guide our discussion and analyzation of the data. In terms of a pattern, you can see that overall, we are similar in the pattern with the state, although we're just a little bit lower. Highlights for us is that our Hispanic subgroup is within 5 points of Region 4 or the state in 4 out of 5 of the subjects. In science, our Hispanic, white, and Asian students were within 5 points. Our white and Asian students did cross that 80% line in science, and our Asian students also did this in math and science. In terms of areas to grow, we know that our continued focus is on our African American and Hispanic student populations. Our next slide shows what percentage of our students met the approaches standard. On the STAR test and the end of course exam, approaches is our minimum passing standard. Here, we've given you on the top 2016-17 and on the bottom 2015-16 so that we can have a 2-year comparison of student populations, as well as you can see we have added special education, economically disadvantaged, and English language learners. Our patterns look very similar, 15-16 to 16-17, and like the last slide, our data is a bit static. Especially for our same student groups, the performance is higher in our white and Asian students. In terms of areas to grow for us, when we look at this data, we know that while special education declined 1% from last year, and that doesn't seem like a large percentage, the state and the region improved. And so last year the gap was 6 percentage points, while this past year that percentage gap grew larger with 9 percentage points. The same thing happened for our economically disadvantaged students, but they did have a higher performance than the previous student population. The next slide shows our master's level. For question.
Nonverbal is not good.
Meaning, first I spoke about special education population for areas to grow, and then our economically disadvantaged student population, just in terms of areas to grow. No, I'm sorry, just what I just mentioned previously. Yes, thank you for that clarification. Yep. Yep. Our next slide shows our percentage of students who met the master's performance level. So remember on the STAR and end of course exams, we have 3 performance levels that students can achieve. Approaches is the minimum standard. MET standard is the second highest you can get. That's our post-secondary readiness. And then master's level is the highest level that you can achieve. So on the TAPER report, the state reports where we did in terms of performing for the approaches level as well as the master's level. So it shows us our minimum standard and our highest standard. Here, for us, just like the region and the state, we improved in all student groups except special education that stayed the same as the previous year. Mastery, what's different for this upcoming year is that it is counted in Domain 1, and so it's important that we increase our percentage of students to receive a mastery level performance. It can not only boost our accountability standing, but we want to make sure that we're really reaching all of our students and that our students are achieving to their highest potential. Our next slide shows the percentage of students who met or exceeded progress measures. So as we talk about 2017, we need to remember that this was the old accountability system, which had 4 indices, and this was our old Index 2, which showed growth in reading and math. And so basically this looks at the prior year and that current year, and it wants to show, did kids make growth? So here in Index 2, it would show if kids made growth, but maybe not necessarily passed at minimum passing standard. So even though our African American and Hispanic students haven't been our highest performers in terms of percent passing, here you can see that we grow our students when they come to us, and we have the highest growth or much growth with our African American and Hispanic students in that progress measure. Our next slide shows the percentage of students who were meeting the approaches grade level And here it divides it out by elementary and middle school, so by grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the subject that they're tested in. Again, remembering that the approaches level is our minimum passing standard. Overall, if we just look at everything overall, we were not within 5 points of Region 4 or the state by grade level, but our areas that came closest to that 80% internal goal that we have for this year were 5th and 8th grade math last year, which is a promising sign for us. Proactively, when we look at 8th grade social studies, the Curriculum and Instruction Department, in partnership with the school's office, has really focused strategically on 8th grade social studies, doing such things like a TEKS item analysis, a test item analysis. We have monthly professional development that focuses both on the content they're going to be learning this next semester or next learning cycle, test-taking strategies. We have field trips planned for them both in and out of school. We have classroom libraries that pertain particularly to social studies for our social studies teachers. And we also have interactive maps that we've recently purchased that also have books that go with them that align with the TEKS and with our curriculum. So we're really focusing very much so also on that social studies, knowing that we did take a dip last year.
What about 4th grade writing?
Yes, we are focusing heavily on 4th grade writing across the board, actually K-8 writing, with literacy applied in our writing workshop model. And part of those professional developments that I spoke about last Thursday, which feels like a long time ago all of a sudden, is that we have focused not only heavily on writing workshop in literacy applied, but we've paired it with what does the STAR test ask for in terms of both reading and writing, and giving strategies and activities and really breaking down those components for principals and literacy coaches to take back to their campuses and then to be able to develop and grow their leadership teams and their teachers on those grade levels. Good question.
I have a question. I'm
Yep.
sorry. So, maybe I'm jumping in here. How much of a correlation was there between the benchmarks we administered and our STAR results? Like, are we able to predict based on our benchmarks how we're going to do on STAR?
Yes, to a degree. So our benchmarks, we take 2 benchmarks, and so last year we're following the same process this year where we have them written or we write them ourselves for our fall benchmarks. And for the spring benchmark, we do a STAR release test 2 years back so that they can use their most recent STAR release test while teaching in class. We mirror what the STAR test looks like for our fall benchmark by the number of questions, by the types of questions, by the TEKS that are tested, by readiness and supporting standards, by level of difficulty and depth of knowledge. So our Research and Accountability and Testing Department does do a correlation for us. When we look at our benchmark scores, by the time our STAR scores come in, they really end up aligning pretty well. The next thing for us this year that is, I think, most exciting with MAP Growth being our screener for reading and math is that after they test their middle of the year, which is this month, there is a statistical analysis behind those numbers that will also give us some STAR predictiveness based on where they are with MOY, with their middle of year. So we're not driving blind. We are being really purposeful. Nothing can really compare to the actual STAR test itself. Remembering that last year was a new company who wrote the STAR test, so there's always a little bit of fluctuation. But we use historical data, we use experts in the field, we use our Research and Accountability Department to really make sure what we're doing is very focused and strategic to be as most STAR-like as we can.
Thank you.
Our next slide shows our end-of-course exams. So these are our 5 high school exams by our student groups. And again, you can see here that we did show growth. You can see in reading and math for our, wrong slide, I apologize. I skipped one. Here we go. Back. I apologize. So we are here on our STAR EOC. So you can see here that across the board, Our U.S. history outperformed our other subjects in all of our student populations. English 1 and 2, as you can see, followed the state and region 4 in terms of the pattern of that lower performing than the other three end-of-course exams. We are aware of this, we know this, and so we are strategically targeting English 1 and 2 both through our TIP and also through Literacy Applied, as mentioned last week with our trainings with our high school principals and associate principals of instruction, really focusing on the English 1 and 2 end of course, both the composition and the multiple choice exam. Sure? Okay. So next, when we look at our AP and IB results for the state, it's noteworthy that they report AP and IB. In our district, we just have advanced placement. So when we look at our data, what we're looking at is just advanced placement, where the state and the region are looking at AP and IB combined. This slide is, we have to remember, is lagging a year. So you'll notice it says class of 2014 through 2016. The solid line is our percent who tested, and the dashed line is the percent who received a 3 or higher on the AP exam in district. Remember, again, for Region 4 in the state, that would include AP and IB. As you can see, our trend, our percent of taking the test has been increasing steadily. We had a little bit of a dip in performance in 2015, but we've been improving slightly over time, and we're hoping that we're going to continue that trend this year, both in taking the exam and in performance of the exam. For all of our students who are in AP courses, we do strongly encourage them to take that AP exam at the end of the course. Our next slide shows SAT and ACT results. Again, this is lagging a year, so you'll notice that it says class of 2015-2016. This just purely shows participation in SAT and ACT. You can see our high rates of participation. This is our third year, so in 2016, the third year that the district has paid for SAT testing, which does explain our high participation rates, but also our expectations for our students, and that because of our participation day for SAT Day, we do anticipate that that will help improve our Domain 1 scores this year for high school and the district as part of our college and career readiness piece. For the next slide, this just shows SAT taken out from ACT. You'll notice that we have dashed lines that show you the minimum for the math score, which was 800, and the minimum for the English language arts was 1600. So back in 2016, this was on the old 2400 scale, where next year when we present this, it'll be back on the 1600 scale. So the district for us is representative of all of our kids, because we have all of our kids taking SAT, versus when we look at the state, these are more representative numbers of students who are potentially only interested in going to college, whereas we want to make sure all of our students take the SAT exam. We do believe that if we continue this process of testing, especially the PSAT 8 and 9, as well as the SAT, that our performance will continue to grow. And we know that the revamping of the SAT test back to the old 1600 scale for English language arts, eliminating the writing component, will also help our scores increase for this next year. So ACT is next. We have a very small percentage of students who take ACT. Again, this is lagging data. Historically, our ACT participation is lower than SAT. That's very similar in the state of Texas. And you can see that both the classes of, as was with 2015, our 2016 class, our Hispanic students exceeded the state average on ELA and science on the ACT. Our next slide shows our advanced course and dual credit course completion. Again, this lags a year, so this is from 2016. It is just course completion for advanced placement and dual credit courses. Here you can see that our African American students and economically disadvantaged students were within 5 points of the region and the state. Our next slide shows types of graduates in terms of the plan for graduation that our kids are on. This data again lags a year, so this was the 2016 data. In 2014, HB 5 came into effect with new graduation requirements. So you can see in the key where we have the old graduation plan and then HB 5 graduation plan. So our numbers, when you look at our circle graph versus Region 4 in the state, we have a large percentage of students who were in the green, which was the old graduation plan. However, students who were graduating that year were given the option, once HB 5 came into effect, if they wanted to then transfer to the new graduation plan, which is why you see we do have a nice size orange slice there. What we will see is that 2017 was the first class graduating under HB 5. Bless you. So our colors next year will dramatically change, where the old plan won't be there, or will be very minimal if there's only a few kids left, and that those next colors of orange, brown, and yellow are foundation plan with endorsements, and our distinguished plan. Those numbers will be much, much different. The next slide shows both our class of 15 and class of 16 graduation rates. The state reports 2 years at once, really just for comparison purposes. For us, our economically disadvantaged students, African American, Asian, and special education, exceeded both Region 4 and the state in terms of graduation rates. So those were some nice highlights for us. On the flip side, when we look at our dropout rates, again remembering that this data lags a year, from 2015 to 2016, all of our groups actually increased their dropout rates except our Asian student population. So we can see that the corresponding data is, as our graduations increase, most of our dropout rates decrease. You will notice that English language learners is a focus for us, as they had a higher percentage of dropouts. Our multilingual department has been working really strategically and very hard on making sure that we not only are working with students and teachers, but also parents. So they've been hosting a student summit that started last spring, and again, we had it this fall, where they really walked through graduation requirements for our English language learners in high school. They offer Saturday targeted tutoring for our ELL students, after-school targeted tutoring at Westfield High School through our 21st Century program. They've established a newcomer academy at Clawton and Wells this fall. Something really exciting that happened was the beginning of our Family Leadership Institute that Multilingual has started, really helping educate our parents on not just graduation requirements, but the education system itself. So their first class was on August 19th, and they are actually graduating on February 3rd, and so we're very excited about that. And also, they've established a mentoring curriculum at several of our middle schools and one of our elementary schools. So while we recognize that that was a high percentage, our multilingual department has been working really, really strategically and very hard at trying to make sure that we not only lower the dropout rates, but we really educate in the process. The next slide shows our graduation in terms of those who enrolled in higher education, and TEA reports on 1-year completion. So you can see on the left side the percent of our students enrolled in Texas higher education. We are within 5 points of Region 4 in the state. And while we dipped a little bit, that's also the trend in Region 4 and the state. The second graph you can see is that across the board, from both the region, the state, and us as well, while we did drop in terms of completion rate in 14-15, community colleges changed their admittance criteria. So if students didn't do well enough on the TSI then they were put in what's called Level 1 certificate or the certification program. And so that certification program doesn't parlay those students into an associate's degree. So that's what explains those numbers on the right-hand side. The next slide shows our staff and our different categories of staff as defined by PINGS. You'll notice that our auxiliary staff increased, so that blue line on auxiliary staff is higher than that of Region 4 in the state, but that was due to our 1.5-mile radius change for our bus routes and the need for more bus drivers that year. This particular year, also 16-17, our other districts were still at the 2-mile mark, so again, explaining why our numbers were a little bit higher. You'll also notice that our professional support staff is a little bit higher than the state as well. This is due to our positions that we have, like our literacy coaches and our math coaches and our academy leaders at our high schools who are considered like teachers, but they're not a teacher of record, so they're considered professional support staff. Our next slide shows the degrees held by our teaching staff. You will notice that we do have a little bit higher percentage there of no degree, and really what that means is that sometimes when folks come on board with us, they may not have yet provided their official transcripts, and when TEA does their full for the TAPER report, they may just not have gotten them to HR just at that moment in time, but as soon as they do turn their transcripts in, HR does make all of those needed adjustments.
I'd like to make a comment. I guess 22, the previous one. Just a comment. You know, so often I hear in our community about our general administration, a whole lot of our community that the old staff, but we have a whole lot of top people, top positions in our administration. And this is a public forum. I hope our community see that we were the guidelines, you know, as far as the requirements as far as our staff and our general administration. These many comments from our communities feel that we have more people on really top staff at our administration level. It's not really correct. That's just a comment I'd like to make. Thank you.
Dr. Topek, is there something we could do with onboarding that would prevent that lag from happening? I'm confused about why we're so high with no degree and so much of that. So is a lot of that 19% folks whose credentials haven't made it to HR?
Yes, sir. Basically what you have is that at the time of the report, I believe we had quite a few. I mean, we had almost 200 plus people that we were kind of waiting in transition, and there's multiple reasons as to why someone would not provide us initially their transcripts. We know they have a degree because they have certification, and in order to have to go through a program and be degreed, have a bachelor's degree in order to do that, but just haven't supplied the information. And like I said, there's multiple reasons as to why. What I hear is that either, sometimes they haven't paid. There is a situation where it's, they have transcripts that haven't been lost. They have to request them. They just haven't gotten to us yet. So there's just multiple reasons. All depends on when they're pulling it. But when I go back and look at the numbers right now, we have about 52 of our teachers that we're still awaiting their official records to get to us. But again, if I look at just that 52 amongst the entire staff of the teachers that we have right now, the reality is that we're still less than I think it's like 2.6% of our teachers that actually are just not noted as having the degree because we haven't received their official records. We also have, as you know, we started the District of Innovation. And so we also are looking at CTE teachers that have a tremendous amount of either certifications in other fields specific in that area, industry, as well as have a ton of experience in industry, and that we've brought to the board in order to approve for those to come in And right now, we have only 8 of those individuals. And so, again, if I look at those numbers, that's less than 1% of our teaching staff that actually do not have a degree. So it's just a matter of timing as to when those official records come in. One of the things I did make the adjustment and tell my staff is that at the end of the day, we know based off of credentialing in other areas relative to their certification that they do have a degree. It's just a matter of us receiving the official record, and so we're looking to make sure that we can make that adjustment, and it does not impact what the state is asking us to do in order to represent that correctly for this particular report.
And it's a really large gap compared to Region 4 and the rest of the state, and there's something we can do to not have that happen when that data gets pulled. We should try to do that, I think.
Yeah, one of the things that we can do that some districts do to not have that percentage is your application is not complete and you can't start until everything is in. As we've been looking at changing our hiring practices over the past few years, we are beginning to get to the point where the pools are large enough that we can make that hard stance. But in some of the cases, we're looking at the quality of the applicant versus someone who had that, and so the numbers are a little higher. But one way we can begin looking at that is having a drop-dead deadline that all transcripts must be in, and those that are not in, you cannot be classified as a full-time teacher.
Thank you.
Well, would that hurt us as far as the professional level? I mean,
it could impact, but again, it's setting an expectation and saying this is what we require. I mean, most places you must have certain things to get in before you're able to be employed, and so this would just be one of those things. However, as I said earlier, we're transitioning to that point because we are trying not to hire as many teachers in certain categories and trying to get degree teachers that have gone through preparation programs, and so the only requirement that is them turning in their transcripts. And again, when I've talked with Mr. McKeithen about it, it has been around some people haven't paid their final bill. They graduated, they have proof of that, they haven't paid their final bill, and so forth. But we can definitely put a drop-dead deadline in there.
thank you.
Our next slide shows years of experience for our teachers. We still have more 1 to 5 year experienced teachers in our district than that of Region 4 and the state, as we did last year, but as those teachers stay, those numbers will move into our 6 to 10 years experience. The next slide shows our salary by years of experience, and I think we all know and we're definitely aware that we do pay higher than our surrounding districts, and you can see that on our blue line by every category of years of experience. Our next slide shows that we also have other required reporting in addition to testing data and demographics data, such as our accreditation status, our report on violent or criminal incidents, and our PEIMS financial standards. We previously presented in September at our public hearing the campus performance objectives, which those were part of the campus improvement plans that our principals came and presented, and we'll have a copy of all of their plans. So to that extent, you can see that in terms of our district for accountability, we did meet standard, which was the same as last year, which is great. Our special education determination status, per the TAPER report by TEA, is that we do need substantial interventions. Our accreditation status is that we are an accredited district, and our financial rating is, again, superior achievement, which is the highest ranking that we can get for financial rating. The last slide indicates our violent and criminal incidents. What we've done here is we've compared 15-16 to 16-17. You will notice that we had an increase last year as compared to the year before. We do believe that that is due to education in terms of educating our registrars and our counselors and our assistant principals and our clerical staff on the proper coding for when incidents happen, so that we are handling issues administratively, but we're also making sure that we are having data quality and accurate data in the system.
So is it safe to say that potentially 15-16 state, those numbers could have been underreported then?
Yes.
Based on,
Based on the data and what, this is our PEAMS data that we've submitted, yes, we believe that there hasn't been, what you see there, that huge increase, specifically under fighting and mutual combat. That indeed this has to do more with the data quality and the training that we've done, as Dr. Topek talked about, the training that we've done with our data entry clerks, and most importantly with our assistant principals that are over-disciplined to, number one, not only address the situations, the disciplinary incidences in the school, but also report it and report it accurately. What consists, it's always a big discussion around what is fighting and mutual combat versus assault. And also the reporting of how many students were involved in this mutual combat. Is it, 2 students? Was it 3? Was it, 5? And how all that reporting happened. So, yes, we may have had some underreporting the previous year.
so we don't, based on that, we don't anticipate 17, 18, seeing that number rise.
We do not believe that this year's numbers will rise, partially because we did a lot of the cleaning up with the data, the quality of the data, and the training of the personnel. And then secondly, because in the secondary schools in particular, we've done a lot of work around restorative practices, and then district-wide, a lot of work around, if you recall, we call it the Spring Way, which are systems and structures that we are implementing in the classrooms and school-wide to address classroom management and student behavior.
And if you remember, part of our strategic plan for 2015-16 was to really work on data quality and data improvements. And so that's an indication of that we're working on that to have more accurate data.
What you get a lot of times, fortunately, have some of the press that will report numbers, and we've had this conversation several times, how sometimes different districts also report differently, and then their numbers might be here and our numbers might be here, and we go, that doesn't jive, So, okay.
Questions? I have questions and comments. One is, it's disappointing to see the low reading and writing scores, and it seems to be grades, all grades, elementary and middle school. But it sure points to the wisdom of the strategic plan that targets literacy. I don't think it warrants us saying, oh, we need to change direction or anything. I think we need to push harder on what we put into that strategic plan, because I think our wonderful instructional people identified this problem right off the bat, that we have a real problem, and you don't turn this thing around in a day. And so I just want to affirm that I think our strategic plan is really going there. One thing that really worries me on page 11, and it was the STAR test 3 through 8, looks like middle school is really having problems. It was 11, page 11. But I'm not having to drive that.
I went too fast.
Looking at grade 7 and 6, I mean, I know you already pointed out the social studies, but when you look at mathematics for grade 7, and of course writing and then reading for grade 6, that's not good achievement.
Absolutely.
No, we completely agree. Overall, middle school
as a whole, middle school saw a drop from the previous year. You're right. Specifically in the area of reading and mathematics, we were really challenged in those areas. A lot having to do with loss of teachers in the middle of the year. But at the end of the day, it is not being as strategic as we should have been in monitoring the data and immediately responding to the data. I think, Mr. Adams, you talked about earlier, do we believe that our benchmark tests that we give, are they a projection, a reflection of what is to come? I believe we didn't do quick enough response to the data that we received from our benchmarks and immediately address those numbers that were coming back. This year, that's been our focus, to be more strategic and provide a quicker response to the numbers as they're coming back. But it is a grave concern for us, middle school. Middle school is always across the, state. It's those, squirrely years because of the students and where they're at. But we did see a significant drop last year, and that is what we're focusing on this year. What successful practices have we seen in elementary that we are able to carry to middle school and hold our teachers and principals and ourselves accountable to doing those practices, those systematized strategies that we have in place that have yielded us results. So, yes, we're on it. Our assistant superintendent for middle schools is working on it, and as a team from the schools leadership office, we are absolutely addressing these concerns.
Having taught middle school and high school, Mr. Adams, you've taught middle school. I used to tell people I thought it was missionary work. And the reason I got into teaching is I was replacing people that quit mid-year. And they needed somebody so desperately that they would hire an uncertified person. I know that's a tough thing, and if there's anything we can do specially to praise and provide materials or, anything we can do for those middle school teachers, I really do think that is a special time of life. It's always a shock to those of us who've done secondary to go work with elementary kids where they smile at you and they love you, and, they just,
It is, a lot has to do with the students, and then, as you said, the teachers, and I believe, Mr. Adams, you and the superintendent had the opportunity to go visit Bailey Middle School, and so that was a great, I think, a great visit for the administrators that were there, the leadership team, as well as the teachers in the classrooms you visited, because you were able to provide some feedback to the teachers. It is sometimes, as a former middle school principal, I can tell you, thankless, because there's days that the kids come and they love you and they want to be there, and then there's another day like, who are you and what did you teach me today, right? But it is being very strategic and systematic on staying the course and coming back, circling the wagons, and holding people accountable. Meeting with Ms. Williams, our principal at Twin Creeks, and looking at her numbers now and how her numbers are much better than the numbers we had last year. The work that she's doing is still very strategic and is still looking at individual student data, but what's making the difference is the what she calls the accountable talks. When we come back with our PLCs, is going back to that list of students and how did your students do and what are those numbers, and holding people accountable. And she said, holding myself, most importantly, holding myself accountable, that I'm also on top of the data and I'm in the classrooms. It is something that we have to stay on top of.
Well, I'm also concerned that we look at the teaching loads the teachers have. Because it seemed to me, sometimes high school teachers will have like 100, 125 students, whereas middle school teachers, it starts at 150. It's just unbelievable how many courses they have and how many students they have come through. And, as long as we're in district and innovation, if we need to innovate there, I'm all for it. Now, could we go to page 20? Right, this is the dropout rates, and it looks like English language learners are a problem, not just in our district, but throughout Texas. Now, are we hopeful now that some of our useful programs, because I don't want to generalize about students, but English language learners I had in the past were sometimes giving feedback that high school didn't really offer them much, that they needed to get out and work. And I thought that perhaps when we have all these wonderful new CTE programs, that it might encourage kids who really need to see something practical out of their course, which you don't always see with Algebra 1. It is there, but can you expand on that? How can we keep these kids in school?
So several things, and I think Dr. Topek went through the work that the multilingual department is doing, and the work began last year because this has been an issue for us, and like you said, across the state, our English language learners are recent immigrants that come with no English, but also little to no education from their home country. Mm-hmm. So they're coming into a brand new school system, not knowing the language, and maybe having a second or fifth grade education, and now they're in high school, right? So the piece that we hope to get some, that we will gain some ground in is on the programs that you saw, the student focus groups, the Family Leadership Institute, where we're teaching about the program, the educational system, and then also turning around, and it's those relationships, it's those connections, because they do come to this country and are sitting either in an English 1 classroom or an English 3 classroom, not knowing the language and not seeing the relevancy. So it's working with our ESL teachers, our teachers that are teaching these students, and this year our effort district-wide has been to put all these students in what we call sheltered classrooms. So in these sheltered classes, I'm the teacher, and the training that I'm receiving, the guidance that I'm receiving is to form relationships with these students and show the relevancy in the courses that they're having to take, right? Whether it's the English 1 or the math class, to show the relevancy, and then what other connections can we make? And so through the CTE program, those pathways that lead to those careers and immediate jobs. So what industry certifications can you graduate with that will give you a job upon graduation and will be that incentive, that motivation to sit through my English, 3 class and sit through my, algebra class that I know I don't need or I don't want to understand. So it's those two pieces. It's the education of the families and the students in the U.S. education system and making those connections with the families, but also with the students, and for the students to see the relevancy in the courses that they're taking and connecting to careers and job opportunities that they'll have. I think the most important piece for us here and these groups of students is them seeing, as you said, Dr. Jensen, is I'm going to be here for 4 years or 3 years while I can take a job. And so when you look at our data, you'll see that our attendance for our newcomers, our recent immigrants, our ELLs drop because they do have jobs. They're either with their dad, painting at night. I personally know several students at Westfield that are either sleeping through class or have poor attendance, and when you talk to them,
they're hanging drywall with their parents, or they're, out doing yard work, and so now they're really tired and won't come to school because they're exhausted, or when they are in class, they're not focused. So it's how do we make the connection, and I'll tell you, the multilingual department has done a lot of personal connection with these students, because once they see one student succeed, then the others will see, but it's how do you do the breakthrough so that we can get that momentum and they can see other examples of their friends making it through, through and out, that then they will also follow.
Okay. That may be another area where we need innovation, and it sounds like you've got some things that work that maybe we should go with.
One of the pieces that we did this past summer, and we plan on doing this summer, is specific summer school for these students. We do get a little bit of additional funding from the state, and we do target these groups of students together, put them in cohorts and little families, and really just address their needs during the summer school program.
So it sounds like you have identified these students as to their needs and who they are. Are we having any at-risk counselors or innovation counselors assigned to them and their families?
Yes, so one of the things, as a counselor in the high schools, you can either have them, 9th grade or A through G and then H through F, or one of the things that we are working on, and you can see as an example at Dekaney, is having one counselor over, these are our English language learners, over the ELLs. And so I was just there on Friday talking to Mr. Reynolds and asking him, how is this strategy working? Because I can be a counselor and have A through F and have a little bit of everything, right? Or I can be a counselor at Dekaney where I'm over just the ELLs. And he said he can see a big difference because this counselor knows her students really well. We also were able to hire someone that's bilingual. They also know the extra accountability measures. They also know the policy related to it. So the connection is tighter, and that counselor is shepherding these students, all the way through. So that's something that we're working on with Dekaney Spring High School, looking at that same thing on how do we identify the kids, and then how do we have someone shepherd them all the way through the system instead of handing them over to another counselor that needs to start all over and another counselor.
I had one last question, and that's on page 21. Right. This one worries me as well, that it looks like our spring graduates are going to college, but they tend to need remediation. Are we not providing a rigorous enough education that they're able to go? Do we need to give them more of a induction process into the college environment? Why are such the remediation rate?
So these numbers are closely tied if we go to the end of course results. So the students are college ready based on the end of course exams in reading and math, and so you have to score at a certain level. You have to not only pass or meet the standards, and remember we talked about approaches level and then meet and then masters, so you have to score at a specific standard in the EOC, in the English 1, English 2, or Algebra 1 test. If you score at this level, you're considered college ready. And so many of our students are not hitting the mark. They may be at the approaches level, meet the standards, or they might have gone through the IGC committee, which, remember the new law that instead of having to pass all 5 EOCs, you pass 3 of the 5 and they're allowed to graduate. So we've got those students that are not meeting the standards. So at the end of the day, what is it that we're doing? 2 things. One is we offer, and I think we've seen before, I think Dr. Topek already brought that to you, is the English
college prep and the math college prep, and those are courses that we teach at the high school level for the students that didn't meet the standard. They passed the EOC, but they didn't meet the college readiness standard, and so they can take that English prep or math college prep course. That's one piece that we're doing. And also, this year, we started it last year, there's that TSI test. In the olden days, we used to take the Compass. Does that ring a bell? And for you to be able to get into college and take a college-level course, you had to take the Compass. You didn't meet the standard in Compass, you had to take a remedial course. So the new Compass, or what the state offers, is the TSI exam. So we started last year now identifying those students that didn't meet the college-ready standard, that are interested in going into college, so being very strategic, because some of these students may be going into the military or have an industry certification going into the job. But those students that didn't meet college readiness and are going to college, then let's help them prepare for the TSI exam, giving that TSI exam to get them college ready so they don't have to go into, in this case, Lone Star, and take the remedial courses.
So we're back to literacy again, is the problem.
Yes. Literacy, numeracy, right now, and specifically at the end of course exams, it's literacy. It's English 1 and English 2 that our students are really struggling with.
I know we put some of these things in place, but if you look at these numbers, this is 13, 14, and 14, 15. So we really don't see yet the fruits, the results from the systems and processes that we put in place to address this. My question, having stated that, is there a way to proactively determine now if those are working, so that we can adjust it? With the lag that we have in the data, it kind of handicaps us, and kids are getting harmed, because it's kind of like we're chasing it, and we make adjustments and put new systems and processes in place. But we can't really wait for the data to find out if they're working.
Are they working or not? I think it goes back to Mr. Adams' question, do we have confidence that our benchmark tests give us their predictions of their performance? And so that's one piece that we're monitoring. The other piece that we're monitoring, specifically, if we talk about the ELL students, we're specifically monitoring their attendance. Their attendance to school, on a daily basis, but also their attendance to the other programs that we're offering, whether it's the tutorial classes, whether it's the parent classes, the summits that we have, the student summits. Those are more current data that we're able to collect and see, are we seeing an improvement? We also monitor what we call our failure reports, the grades that the students are receiving on a 6-week basis and on a semester basis. How are those ELL students performing after each grading cycle? So those are, the little checkpoints that we have along the way that are showing some glimmer of hope, but it is, as you said, lagging data. We've got to stay the course, stay the focus, and then just keep pushing harder.
And you started off by saying the end of the course really drives what happens with that, and we are seeing challenges with that data as well.
Yes.
So I think, that's kind of, to me, our opportunity to look at where we can have intervention and make adjustments now.
Yes.
I know you mentioned that we're looking at the systematic things that are happening, say, at the elementary level that we can replicate in other areas, such as at the middle school. But I think we've got to do, to me, a faster job with intervention.
Yes.
With our mobility rate and things that we're experiencing, and I know it's easy said, but it is done. But
one of the things to think about as well is, so one of the ways you can look and see if things are working is begin looking at data at the elementary level and moving up. We were talking about providing interventions for high school students when they've had gaps or holes from elementary through high school. Then it really is about trying to provide intervention in tutoring 8 years worth of information in a year. And so we are working with our teachers and looking at those high-yield strategies that we can begin working with them on. But it's also understanding that we've put some systems in place, and based upon the philosophy that we've chosen to implement, for example, in one area that will help us with Domain 1 for accountability is looking at the number of students that perhaps they're taking the SAT, for example. Well, if the more students that we have, the lower that score could be, because we're testing every student in the district versus some districts only test those that say they want to test, and most likely those are the ones that will pass. In addition to that, we make philosophical changes in the district regarding AP testing. So it used to be that you could take an AP course and not test, or only the ones that would pass the test would take it because it's not mandated. Well, we've changed our philosophy that everyone that's in it, you must take the test, which means now you have more students that are taking the test. And so those things do have consequences as a result of doing that, but we believe they're still in the best interest of students, because some students that would not take the SAT to go to college could pass it and could get a full-ride scholarship to go to college, and the only thing that stopped them was not being able to pay for the test and take it. And so we are balancing those things and looking at them and understanding that they do have results when we're not just having a sample of our students from high schools taking tests, we're having all of them taken. We understand that that could mean that some results are lower, but in terms of end-of-course tests or STAR tests, that's just the indication of we've got to continue to push in terms of basic instruction and making sure that those gaps are filled at the elementary level moving up, so we can ensure that we're not trying to close elementary and middle school gaps in high school.
If I could, I'd like to commend you all for the every child approach that I'm hearing here. I really appreciate that. With regard to the English language learners, it occurs to me that some of that stuff over the long term will work itself out as we work our way into our dual language program. And the other thing that I think needs to be said is the demographic composition of our teachers should probably more closely reflect the demographics of our students. I'd like to think that if there were more relationships with more Hispanic teachers talking to these kids about staying in schools, that might help.
That's a good point. I just want to go back to remediation has been a long existing challenge in this district. Now, I work in higher ed, and it's not just spring, but that's been talked about in this district for a long time. The performance of our African American students, when you compare them to all of the other demographic subsets, that's an issue. I also have to agree with what my colleague said about the mix of teachers in the district as well. That could be an issue as well. But those are my comments.
I know we had asked, I believe it was in the work session in December, for a list of the programs and centers that we're utilizing, so that we could start to track which ones are giving us the best ROI. And I don't know, I know other people, I don't have my notes, so got my notes tonight, but I know all of the board had pieces that they asked for. So I think that's a good way also to start looking at right now, how we're making those interventions and those changes, instead of waiting 2 years down the road when we get the data. We need to be able to address it.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to mention, we did provide that information a few weeks back, I believe, before the break in the board update. It has a list of all of the programs and the vendors and how much we're spending on those and which audiences they're targeting as well.
Look at that. And then it was in the board update?
Yes, ma'am. I think it was right after the December board meeting.
That's when I asked it at the work. Well, I will look for it. I will go back and check. I don't know, did anybody?
I didn't complain about all the SAT tests at all, because I really think that is a good idea, because sometimes
that SAT exam can seem like something that's completely unobtainable, and nobody you know has ever experienced it and that sort of thing, and then you just think, oh, it's another test. And then we had a lot of kids in those AP courses that didn't take the test, like my daughter. So, yeah. So I think we're making appropriate and good changes. I just want to make sure that what we're investing in from a financial perspective, as a board, we're responsible for the finances, that we're spending that money in the right places and wisely.
And so the piece, we provided the list of resources, but now, at the end of the year, and based on our results, the proof is going to be, is it working or not? If we are implementing X program, or X curriculum, or X software, did it bring us the results that we were looking for? So we do have, for example, for the ELL students in the high school, we do have additional resources and additional curriculum that these newcomers are placed in. And so we'll be able to determine, did we make growth? Was there any progress? And we may not meet the approaches level on the STAR exam because these are new immigrants, but we should be able to show some progress. So we'll be monitoring the performance of the students as it relates to the resources that we purchase to address their needs. Is it working or isn't it working?
And I want to make sure we have realistic expectations, because can you really assess from 1 year if that program's working? When we talked about the dual language during the work session on last Thursday, they said it's going to take, 5 years before you start to really see the results. So as we look at them, I want my mind is open that some of them can't really yield the results in a year and say, this is or isn't working, but where we can, I'd like to be able.
I also wanted to sort of acknowledge something of an elephant in the room with regard to the TAPER report. So we're going to get this report next year, and that report will reflect a school year where we were out of school for nearly a month. And we're going to be comparing apples to oranges to an extent. That doesn't mean that we get to take a break and, kick our feet back and say, oh, we lost a month, so we don't really have to work hard. But I'm thinking about the numbers I'm seeing now and how disappointing some of those numbers are, and then thinking forward a year about what that's going to look like after this school year.
I don't want to minimize the challenge of those ELL students, because having been a teacher where students were placed in my biology classroom by their age, and just doing a lab one day, I found out they didn't know how to use a ruler. Now that tells me they didn't learn in elementary school the basics we take for granted here. So there's just incredible enrichment I know that you have to go through in those sheltered classrooms. I know some people think they're easy, but I don't. I think they're just interesting and challenging.
And then just to reiterate, I know Dr. Kopik mentioned it in her presentation, but we do know that our student population is very diverse, and they have diverse backgrounds, different level of socioeconomics, different race and ethnicities. And we do know that our teaching population is different than the students that we teach. And so we've acknowledged that. That's one of the first things we need to do. And then what is it that we're doing about it? And that's, if you'll recall, was it last year or a year before? You tend to lose a year here. But when we started this work was when we started our work with Texas A&M and looking at cultural proficiencies. And that was the work that we started for the first time as the turnaround work at BAML Elementary. Our teaching staff at BAML did not at that time match the student population. And so with the training that we did around cultural proficiency and teachers not only understanding the students, but
what instructional strategies were more relevant to the students that they were teaching, what resources, what materials were more relevant. We saw the huge turnaround at Bamel Elementary, and then we've now used that and done the same training with all of our principals and beginning the dissemination to the teachers, because we have great teachers that are very dedicated to our students and to Spring ISD. Our administrators are dedicated, but it is learning what we need, what skills we need to be able to better address the needs of the students before us that are different than who we are and where we come from, but we need to be able to make that connection, the connection through relationships, through the way we talk and teach, and through the resources that we use on a daily basis with those students. So we know that, and that's something that's, top of mind. As Dr. Topek said, Mr. McKeithen's team is head-on when we start with the induction. That's part of the training that we bring all of our teachers during onboarding, and then Dr. Bruce is going out to the schools as well as different departments and also continuing the training. It's who our student population is and what it is that we need to be able to do to meet their needs.
Thank you, Dr. Topek. This has been an interesting comparison of our district and state academic performance, and as you have indicated here, it's year 2015 and 2016. So for 2017, we do want to see some improvement here and continue that into this school year, the class of 2018. So we look forward to seeing that improvement. Thank you.
And I would like to comment to Westbrook. It was the third attachment, guys. It's there in the attachment.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Ms. Hill, do we have anyone registered to speak to this agenda item under public hearing tonight?
No, Madam President, we do not.
Okay. As there are no identified speakers, let us continue with tonight's agenda. For our next item, I would like to again recognize our Chief of Curriculum and Instruction and Assessment, Lauren Topek.
Thank you.
Did I give you time to catch your breath?
I'm good. I'm ready. So I think as we are loading up the PowerPoint, I think what's really exciting for us is twofold. One is coming off the heels of the TAPER report is our education planning guide. We're really excited that this year we're able to come before you in January so early in advance to be able to really show you the changes that we are proposing for this next year so that our counselors can start having those sessions with parents and with students for upcoming grades, and so that our students can start selecting their courses and master schedules can be starting to be built early before the school year ends. So we're very excited to that degree in terms of where we landed with our data and where our course offerings are. There is definitely a connection, and that we are very strategic in reviewing every single course that we offer both in the middle school and the high schools. Today, for our education planning guide, of course, this reaches our Reach Every Student, our first key imperative, as well as our opportunities and choice for every family, because we cover our core curriculum, and we also cover CTE and advanced placement and performing and visual arts and opportunities that we can give our children in addition to our core content. According to our Texas Administrative Code, the district must provide students the opportunity each year to select courses in which they intend to participate from a list that includes all courses required to be offered, and that's what our education planning guide will reflect. This undertaking is truly a cross-departmental, all-district, hands-on-deck experience to produce what's before you in your spiral binders. We have our core content curriculum team. We have our programs from performing and visual arts, CTE, athletics, multilingual, special ed, guidance and counseling, college and career ready. We have our research accountability department, and of course, we have our communications team who helps pull all the pieces together for us. And so this year, we also had principals on our EPG committee, and so I want to thank Mr. Bostic, who's been in the audience representing the principals who
Thank you.
in that committee for us. And also in our audience, I do just want to recognize our curriculum instruction team and advanced academics and special ed and multilingual and PBA and CPE who are here to support, because they were very much an integral part to ensuring that everything is accurate and that we offer the best for our students in the 18-19 school year. So thank you, everybody who's in the audience. So how do all of the pieces connect for the Education Planning Guide? In our Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 74, that talks about the required curriculum that you must include in all districts. That then is related to what's called our CO22 table, which is our PEIMS data standards. But in the CO22 table, it lists all the courses that you can offer through the state. From those two documents, that then turns into our Education Planning Guide, meaning what courses are we going to offer in our district in this coming year. Once we have our courses solidified, we work with data management team and technology to really ensure that everything is in eSchool for the following year for rollover. Any additions and deletions are also made known and are corrected for the following year. And then, of course, we're very excited because we're here so early that then gets into student schedules, which ultimately, after they complete their courses, those grades land on their transcripts. So all of the pieces connect, and this is a very integral part of ensuring that we're able to walk through each of those processes for the following year, but early enough this year so that we are well prepared in advance. Last year, we talked about our connection to P16, the 60 by 30 in Texas, that by 2030, 60% of Texans ages 25 through 34 will have a certificate or degree. So when we look at that, that is our current first grade class of students. And so we are connecting K-12 to higher education in everything that we do, and we're very aware of that. And so we don't want to minimize and forget that this is very much a part of the process when we look at courses to make sure that our kids are successful beyond high school. So now for our high school education planning guide. First I'm going to go through additional courses, some course deletions, and then any clarifications that we had. I've tried to organize these by departments as we did last year. Our first two courses that we have added this year, which Dr. Hinojosa brought before us in the fall, is our engineering science and our engineering design dual credit courses, which is our partnership with UT Tyler. So we're very excited because these courses, these engineering courses, are part of Project Lead the Way. And while we've had these courses in the past, now having that partnership with UT Tyler gives our students another choice in terms of being able to now take these classes for dual credit. So for our CPE department, we are very excited that we were able to add these courses and give our kids another opportunity for dual credit. Additionally, for dual credit, we've had 3 courses that we have been able to add with Lone Star. The first class is Chemistry 1405. This is our first dual credit chemistry course that we've had, so we're very excited that we're able to offer this to our kids. For every class that we add that's dual credit, what we do is we ensure that it's called crosswalking, either our process standards or our content standards, and Lone Star then approves those to ensure that it matches our high school course as well. So this has been crosswalked to chemistry, and we're very excited that we're giving kids an opportunity to take general chemistry at dual credit level. Additionally, we have Chemistry 1411 and 1412, which has been crosswalked with engineering design and problem solving. And then Physics 1401 and 1402, which is crosswalked to Physics A and B. And what this is really for students who are really our non-engineering kids and maybe have no physics credit, but they want to major in a medical field, and they would need this to go into a college major such as anatomy or physiology or kinesiology. The next addition that we have for this year is in our social studies department, special topics in social studies, ethnic studies. This is part of our textbook adoption cycle proclamation 2018. I'm sure you all remember vividly last year our big overhaul with our CTE TEKS and our LOTE TEKS and our big adoption process that we went through. This year it's actually very, very small. We just have this ethnic studies course, and so we have started that process in the fall with our committees, and we'll be bringing forward to you later in the spring any materials that we will adopt for the following year and implement should students choose to want to take this course. What's exciting about this course is that you can see the descriptions. It can include, but not limited to, an examination of African American studies, Hispanic studies, Asian American studies, and Native American studies. So the textbook options have a plethora of materials for us to work our way through. So we're working very closely with Kevin Johnson in our warehouse, and he's been a gem in helping lead that process with us. Next, you can see that we have added 9 courses for virtual, which we are really excited about because these give our students in the ASAP program the opportunity to really remain on that foundation and endorsement graduation plan. So you'll see that some of these are math and science courses. We have a LOTE course, French. We also have some CTE courses. And this is a really exciting opportunity for us, especially at the ASAP program, so that our kids also have more choices to choose from than such a narrow selection.
And are these some of the courses that we also see the need for recovery?
Yes. That's the reason that they're coming.
The languages?
Yes, especially the languages, because remember, they may be as part of the ASAP program, but they still need to meet the graduation plan, and so a foreign language course is a requirement.
What's an ASAP student?
It's a program that we have, students achieving, oh my God, now I can't even remember, you asked me the acronym, but it is a program that we have that is at our old early college building. It is an alternate schedule. We run 3 schedules. Students come for 4 hours a day, get credit for the entire day, are able to take their courses on a blended learning model, so some is online, some is face-to-face. They come as early as 7. There's a schedule from 7 to 11. They can come from 12 to 4, and then from 4 to 8. And so they're able to recover credits. They're able to, for students that are working or that are parents, have this alternate schedule in order to be able to graduate on time or with their classmates.
So those are the courses that we're adding for next year that we're recommending to add. Next comes, and this happens every year in every district where you have course cleanup, and you really look at potential courses for deleting for that next year. And so the first batch of courses, if we look at our LOTE, our languages other than English, the first and the last one, the cultural and linguistic topics in Spanish, and the special topics for language and culture, there are no formal textbooks and resources for these classes. For both of these classes put out by the state, and we currently don't have a curriculum for those classes through the multilingual department. There's a process in place also that students have to place into these classes. We have Ms. Mendoza, Ms. Hoke, who are from our who lead our multilingual department, and they are continuing to have discussions about how can we potentially pilot these courses for 1920, which also means that what does that look like for curriculum that's written, and what does that look like for what type of student would be taking those courses. So this also gives them some more time to work with surrounding districts to see what they are potentially doing as well, and how we can partner some thought process with that. French 5, we are building our French program. As you know, we have a very robust Spanish program for our language other than English. Currently, we actually don't have any students in our French 4 program class, which is the AP level class, so we're really working towards building up our French program so that our students can not just take the 2 years required, but really continue to French 3 and French 4, and then we can look at what French 5 could potentially look like for us. The next batch of deleted courses, these come through our speech and debate and our performing and visual arts department. Debate 3, oral interpretation 3, and theater production 3 and 4, each of those have a pre-AP course. The reason why we're deleting these courses is because there's not a direct correlation to an AP test that we can make with these courses. The good news is that for kids who are in these pathways and who are really students who love speech and debate or who are really in the performing and visual arts trajectory, there is still the higher level course of debate 3, oral interpretation 3, and theater production 3 and 4, just not for pre-AP weight. The next piece is really our clarification, so that was really it in terms of deleted courses. We have our advanced academics department in the back that we're very excited that they're here. Most of them are here, and they worked very diligently going through every pre-AP and AP course in the entire education planning guide to make sure that the language was very clear. And here you can see where we say success on AP blank exam, or a score of 3 or higher may earn college credit, and expected to take the AP exam. The purpose here is that not every college always takes AP credit, and so you may earn college credit, but it doesn't necessitate that it's a must, that the college will take it. So we just want to make sure that we do have that clarifying language in the guide. Most colleges do take the AP credit, but we want to make sure that we're very clear with that may earn college credit, but again, as Dr. Watson said, we're encouraging and also making sure that our kids who are taking those AP courses really are taking the AP exam.
So I know that was a lot of work for them to go through all those courses, and then they still be sitting here at 8:45?
Yeah.
So they can stand up so we can recognize them and let them know we appreciate all their hard work.
Tiffany Wilcox, our manager of advanced academics, and Julie Hill and Aisha Coleman, and also Amisha Watts, who are our specialists. Amisha is our new pre-AP specialist. We do have an AP dual credit specialist who just came on board and was unable to make it tonight. We've hired our last GP specialist who's coming on board in a few weeks, so they really did a huge amount of work on this, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
Next, these next two slides that I'm going to show you are really, we've focused a lot, as you look in the EPG, the second section of the Education Planning Guide are the course descriptions. The first part is really a lot of, I call it the front matter, but it's really the beginning sections. The purpose and the audience for this is really our parents and students. But we also know that counselors use this as well for discussions with kids and with parents as well. And so we wanted to make sure that both parents and students understood what potential course sequencing they could have for each of their core content courses and in what order. So again, these are just possibilities of course sequencing depending on students' needs and or interests. These are the basic courses. The next slide shows for our advanced academic course sequencing, what those possibilities can look like. The state is always updating what courses can count for what type of third or fourth year advanced math or science course. Today they actually sent out an update just from December 17th where they even updated it again. So these are possibilities, but we want to be able to give students and parents an idea of what kind of trajectory they can have starting in 9th grade of here are the courses I could take. Exciting for us this year is we also added in the same type of course sequencing for our LOTE courses in Spanish and French. So you can see that our multilingual department has worked really strategically to lay out options for students depending on what type of Spanish class they take, or if they're a native Spanish speaker, what that pathway will look like, and then you can see those options for French as well that we are building out and working to build a more robust pathway for kids taking French. The next page really shows that we have added in information to ensure that our audience of both parents and students and counselors can really have that guidance in terms of being consistent across high school campuses to adhere to guidelines about grading and understanding how credits are earned. So here we added a section where we really spelled out piece by piece what it means. It can be a little bit complex, especially for a student entering high school, to understand the system, and so we've really tried to lay it out to make it as plain language as we can to explain what that process is and what that means in terms of credits. The next two slides build upon that same theory, which is that schedule changes and policies we want to make sure are consistent across the board on our high school campuses. And so again, we've really laid out what does course selection look like, when can you change, what's your drop-dead deadline, what are your guidelines for changing, and then at what points in time during the school year is it appropriate or not appropriate to be able to make schedule changes. This is really important to ensure that our kids don't miss their 90% of seat time to get their credit at the end of the class, so that they know exactly when they can, essentially like in college, drop or add a course. This also will help our counselors so that they can point our students in the right direction to be able to say, remember right here, it tells us when we can do this according to policy and our processes in the district. The next section that we added for this year is we wanted to make sure that parents really understand that CPR is a requirement for high school graduation. It's not a new requirement, but it's something that sometimes flies under the radar, and so we wanted to really bring it to the forefront that you don't need your certificate, but you do need your training in CPR, and this can happen anywhere in grades 7 through 12. Our PE department, Armando Jacinto, works very hard and strategically with our PE teachers to make sure that it's administered by PE teachers. We have really been working on administering it in high school for the kids who didn't catch it when it first started in middle school, so starting with our seniors, and then also starting in middle school, so that the hope is by 1920, we've really, our high school kids who were here, they've passed through, and we really can do CPR training in middle school, but we'll still have to catch those kids in high school who maybe are transfer kids who weren't there at high school during that time when we had given the course. So really the push and the direction for our athletics department and our PE teachers is going to be to really try and get this accomplished in grade 7 so that kids don't have to worry about it for high school graduation come high school. The next piece that we're really, really excited about is that we've added back in this year our CTE section has our pathways and all of the endorsements and the courses that kids can take in their multiple options. But what we've added to each page at the bottom are the jobs and career pathways that kids can actually go into in this field. And then working with college and career readiness, adding in what are those salaries that you could potentially make if you land in job X. And so this really makes a nice connection and a tie for kids to say, not just this is what I'm interested in or this is the pathway that I want to take because I want to get this endorsement or I'm on the endorsement graduation plan, but how does this connect for me post-high school and post-college, so I really can start planning my trajectory after we leave K-12. So we're very excited that we were able to add that piece back in and put salaries. These are actual salaries in today's day. These aren't from, last year or 10 years ago. We had to really research and make sure that these were accurate for today. The next piece that we added in about endorsements is we just added in some clarifying information about how you can earn an endorsement.
I just want to make a comment before you move on.
Yes.
I like how you added the outlook. And it lets them know if this is a stable career, if it's increasing, or if it's one that's decreasing.
Yes, and I want to thank our CTE department, Cynthia Williams and Felicia Hill, and our college and career department for really working very hard to get that information and to put that in there and to make sure that it was very accurate for us.
Yeah, I like that.
So with our pathways, we have some beautiful charts that lay out for students and parents what pathway they can take and what endorsement. We felt that we just wanted to add another layer of clarification in terms of how do you earn an endorsement corresponding to your pathway chart. So we've just put in a little bit more narrative about how you can do that, especially for people who maybe the visual is really nice, but maybe they need the words that go along with it. Now we have both that accompany it and go together. What you'll also notice is that we did add information about how you can earn your STEM endorsement in the core subjects of math and science. We don't have a corresponding chart for that, but it's really important that we want parents and students to understand that not only is this an option, but there are multiple ways that you can achieve this through our math and science courses. For middle school, we have no changes for the 18-19 school year. Our next steps after this evening is to ensure that we have our education planning guide, and we work with our data management team on eSchool Plus to ensure that all of our kids graduate with endorsements and industry certifications and/or distinctions, and that we have training that goes along with that. So we have systems that data management has been already working on for the next year in terms of rollover and starting those master schedule trainings and building out the structure for them. We do know that we have a lot of training that we need to partner with both data management and compliance and with guidance and counseling with the support of the different programs and departments. So you can see academic support services, CTE, curriculum and instruction, multilingual, PBA, and special ed, because there are unique pieces, especially for high school, that the experts in those areas know really well. And so we want to make sure that our counselors understand those pieces just as well for when they have those conversations with their parents and also with students. And then, of course, we have the monitoring that comes after, and all along the way with data management. They have pieces that they monitor, guidance and counseling, as well as our Office of School Leadership. Part of this, as you can see, is our personal graduation plan that all 8th graders do fill out. It's in the education planning guide, actually in both of them, and this is a next step that we know that Ms. Zimmerman and the counseling department take very seriously, and they're off and running with their 8th graders going into high school. Question?
How successful are we at getting the awareness and the sign-off on these parents?
So the awareness starts at 8th grade, and so actually we have schedules now for our high school counselors to meet, to go down to the middle schools and meet with the 8th graders. We will also, once again, do parent sessions to educate the parents on the process and what their 4-year graduation plan looks like. The expectation is that that graduation plan be completed and signed off by the end of 9th grade. So we start the work, and some of them will get done in 8th grade. Parents are signing off, but the expectation is that by the end of 9th grade, every plan that every student has a plan, and that it is signed off by their parent and on file.
How successful?
How successful are we? To the very best of our ability in attempting, and I would say we do better with the 8th grade. And then at registration, at that point, we get them, and we're able to, while the students are enrolling and the parents are right there with them, we're able to get them. The longer that we wait, the less successful that we are in getting those sign-offs. It is a state requirement that we have that sign-off, so every time the counselor has to be calling in and asking for the parent to come in.
And I can let you know, having had to sign 2 of them, that they do hound when they don't get them back on the deadline.
I
know when you get in the higher grades, it's oftentimes harder to get parental engagement.
Get them signed off. It is one of the pieces that the student, at the time that they complete their graduation plan, they also select their endorsement. They also have an opportunity to change their endorsement, right? That pathway that they want to select, the STEM, the public service, and that requires a parent signature. So 9 times out of 10, if the student wants to change, the counselor is not going to be able to do anything until we've got that parent signature.
So the students will then hound the parents to say, come up and sign. I did want, Mr. Adams, drew a blank. I'm so used to calling our program ASAP, and that's what is known in our community, and I want to thank the team out there for quickly texting me and saying, remember, it's Achieving Success Academic Program. But our students do know it as ASAP, and the acronym really helps the students know that we're trying to graduate them as soon as possible, right? This is a way that we can work around their schedule, whether they're parents, teen parents, or working students, that we will do whatever it takes to make sure that they graduate as quickly as possible.
And, earlier we talked about the need for remediation at graduation, but with a lot of the partnerships we're doing with the universities and the career pathways and things that we've put in place as of late, hoping, that we will see some of the fruit from that work and reducing that need for remediation, since they're already working with the colleges before they even leave.
And Dr. Tupek, do I understand that your team who put these together? Okay, this is one of the best guides I've ever seen. It really is. And I just love that you had one page where it showed which high schools had which specialty courses, because I know we have so many programs now going to the different high schools. It's easy to get mixed up. This is absolutely excellent.
We do help with the content, but pulling it together and the design is done from communications, and Angie Wynn has just done a magnificent job of really being our graphic designer and literally sitting with us side by side and making sure that everything is just perfect. So I do want to make sure that we mention that he is the one who makes it look so beautiful.
And let me add to that, you started at the middle school with a very nice planning guide. And it shows parents the direction that the students need to be going in, starting in middle school and continuing into high school. So both of these are very nice. And you have academic, they have academic achievement inventories, so that, kids can go down the list and see, this is what I'm doing.
And a lot of the content is something that has been there for the past 2 years that Dr. Hinojosa did start, when we really turned this from a program of studies to an education planning guide, so that parents really can understand and sit side by side with their kids to really walk through each of those pages, and we've just built on those year after year.
Have you ever thought about doing an orientation with the parent and the kids?
So they do.
They do. Oh, yes. We use
Capturing those things then?
Yes. Oh, yes. And so these education planning guides, especially the high schools, we will print, and our counselors will take them to the parent meetings that we have. And those are evening meetings where we encourage the students and the parents to come together so that the parents can use it as their little workbook as they're going through their session.
And is this information also on Naviance?
A lot of the information is on Naviance, but not the course catalog that we have here. All the courses that are in there, those pieces are not in Naviance.
I'm just looking at sections of it that just are wonderful.
Yes. We do have a lot of those pieces in the college readiness website, and then, of course, in our CTE website that parents can go through. But the college readiness has the biggest components of this handbook in there. And then, of course, the entire handbook is there.
But Naviance will be able to, for instance, if a student has trouble and fails a course, and Naviance is the one that reminds them that they have to, take this, or they may have to shift their 4-year planning guide because of having to retake the course. So, but all that is accounted for. I mean, there's so many courses here. It must be a tremendous job.
Yes, so there's 2 pieces that we're working on with eSchool, the R4.0. It does have the ability to have the graduation plan in there, and then for the alerts to come up when the student has failed a course. So when the counselors are scheduling, that we'll have the ability to know they failed English 2, don't just automatically do a rollover. So those are pieces that we're working with eSchool to get that function up and going. The same thing with Naviance.
Once we have those pieces in eSchool, Naviance takes that information from eSchool, and then we'll be able to show it in the Naviance site.
Good. Well, nothing makes success better than a good plan.
Yes.
Well done.
And with this plan, our principals will be able to complete their master schedules. Because students will schedule early with parents, and by June, our principals will have their master schedule so that Mr. Keaton of Dion can make sure that we have the required teachers starting in the fall. Yes, this is a very good plan.
That is...
We got a time schedule,
That is the timeline, and Mr. Miranda and his team from data management have an action plan with very specific deadlines, and if you look at the education planning guide, Dr. Topek and the team was able to put like deadlines of when you can drop courses, so we put those dates throughout, not only to inform the students and their parents, but also that's an accountability piece for us. If we say that the education planning guide is coming to the board in January, the schools, and I'll tell you the principals are waiting for this, will now have them. They'll start according to the timeline that Ms. Miranda's team has for us. They've started the training. So it's everything is building on there, the timeline for us to be able to have student schedules ready by June, and that they're distributed, and then it picks up right here when the students pick up their schedule, what time they have to add and drop. All of those pieces are being more transparent with the parents, but also holding ourselves accountable, because now we've put it out there. Now we've got to meet these deadlines.
Wow, 2018 is beginning to look real good in August.
Yes.
Starting back.
Yes.
Looking real good.
I have a question about grade point average calculation. When I was teaching, it used to be possible for students who were taking AP or honors courses to get higher than a 4 for an A. Is that still done?
Yes. So the students that are in AP courses or dual credit courses, we call them weighted courses, and that calculation, they should have extra weights added to it.
Yes, on page 22 and 23.
Okay, that's what I needed. Thank you.
Okay, team, let's see how we can help them out. I will now entertain a motion that the Board of Trustees approve the proposed changes for the Educational Planning Guide for 2018-2019 as presented by the administration.
I'll second.
I moved. Oh, sorry. I moved that the Board of Trustees approve the proposed change for the Education Planning Guide 2018-2019 as presented by the administration.
Do I have a second?
Now I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. It has been moved by Mr. Davis and seconded by Mr. Adams that the Board of Trustees approve the proposed changes for the Educational Planning Guide for 2018-2019 as presented by the administration. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Curriculum, leadership, to you guys. Thank you, ladies. Thank you for staying late with us.
Madam President, could we
Now,
take a
just
small
tell our
break?
principals and counselors, it's all in their hands
Could
now.
we take a short break, please?
Yes. I think we need to take a break. 9:03.
Gone for a long day.
If we could have your attention, we will resume with our meeting. Thank you. For our next item, I'd like to recognize our Chief of School Leadership and Student Support Services, and she's not here.
We gave them a break. They said after all those questions, we're out of here.
Look to the left, it's okay. Look to the right,
Oh, my goodness. She just introduced you. Introduce me. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
You're right on time.
Thank you.
Now, introduce our Chief of School Leadership and Student Support Services, Peter Hinojosa.
Thank you, Ms. Newhouse, and members of the board. We do apologize
Not a problem.
for the delay. We, just took a breather, but, we have two items, Ms. Newhouse, that we're bringing to you, to the board tonight. The first one is on page 12, and this is, again, the acceptance of our grant funds. This item is, specifically that we request that the board accept the two proposed grant funds totaling $12,000, and it's two. One is from the American Association of School Administrators, ASA, and the National Joint Powers Alliance, and it's a mini grant for kids. That's specifically the name, mini grant for kids. It's a $2,000 grant, which we wrote to and were awarded, and it's a grant specifically for our students that will allow the creative expression and sensory processing as vehicles for recovery after their traumatic experiences during Hurricane Harvey. They will be distributed by our campus counselors, and they can be used by the counselors and the students and/or sent home to the parents, and the parents can use it with the students. And that was a grant for $2,000. The second grant is from the Simmons Foundation, and this is for a total of $10,000. And this was a result of a much larger grant that we applied for. It's a Harvey Relief Fund grant, and the Simmons Foundation read our proposal, and they were very interested in what we were recommending, once again, to assist the families of our students as well as our staff that was impacted by Hurricane Harvey. And this is to provide financial assistance for rent, utility bills, lodging, and food. And so that was an advanced grant. So for this item, we're asking that the board approve the awarded amount of $12,000 and authorize our superintendent of schools to execute the grant as outlined below.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion that the Board of Trustees accept the two proposed grants fund totaling $12,000. One, the American Association of School Administrators and National Joint Powers Alliance mini grant for kids, care bag. Two, the Simmons Foundation, awarded to Spring ISD and authorized the superintendent of schools or designee to execute the grant as outlined in the grant as presented by the administration.
Madam President, I move that the Board of Trustees accept the two proposed grant funds totaling $12,000 for the American Association of School Administrators and the National Joint Powers Alliance mini grant for kids and care bags, and the Simmons Foundation, awarded to the Spring ISD, and authorize the superintendent of schools or his designee to execute the grant as outlined in the grant as presented by the administration.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Ms. Durant and second by Ms. Gonzalez that the Board of Trustees accept the two proposed grant funds totaling $12,000 for the American Association of School Administrators and National Joint Powers Alliance mini grant for kids, care bag, and the Simmons Foundation, awarded to Spring ISD and authorize the superintendent of schools or designee to execute the grant as outlined in the grant as presented by the administration. Is there any discussion?
Where is this going to be housed? Your office?
So the two grants, the $2,000 grant is housed in my office in my area with our Director of Counseling and Guidance. The $10,000 Simmons Foundation grant is also being managed through our counseling department,
The funds are in our Education Foundation organization. We will be managing it based on the outline of our grant, and the Education Foundation will be facilitating the distribution of the funds to the families of the students and/or staff identified.
No other discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. Please continue with your next item, Mr. Host.
Thank you, Ms. Newhouse. The second is another Harvey Relief Fund grant that we applied for. Quick turnaround, but always looking for opportunities out there to address the needs of our community. And this specific grant, the Hurricane Relief Fund grant, was established by our Mayor Sylvester Turner and County Judge Ed Emmett, and it's managed by the Greater Houston Community Foundation. They've approved our grant application in the amount of $336,900. And the purpose of the HHSRF grant is to provide Hurricane Harvey impacted students in grades 6 through 12 and district staff with basic needs such as clothing, mental and emotional self-care needs. We will be able to hire a case manager to oversee the distribution of these resources. Families of secondary students and/or staff members will be eligible to apply for financial assistance of $100 to provide assistance with rent, utilities, and/or lodging. And in this grant, we specifically targeted our secondary students. We saw a lot of relief that came in, such as uniforms, resources for our elementary students. It was really our secondary students that hadn't been addressed. So that's what this grant will do for us. And what we are asking the board is that the board accept the proposed grant funds and the totaling of amount of $336,900 from the Hurricane Harvey Relief Fund, managed by the Greater Houston Community Foundation, and consideration of proposal to authorize the superintendent of schools to identify a partner organization and negotiate and execute a contract with the identified organization to assist with effective and efficient administration of the grant.
I will now entertain a motion that the Board of Trustees accept the proposed grant funds in the amount of $336,900 from the Hurricane Harvey Relief Fund managed by the Greater Houston Community Foundation, and authorize the superintendent of schools to identify a partner organization and negotiate and execute a contract with the identified organization to assist with the effect and efficiency of the administration of the grant.
Madam President, I move that the Board of Trustees accept the grant funds in the amount of $336,900 from the Hurricane Harvey Relief Fund managed by the Greater Houston Community Foundation, and authorize the superintendent of schools to identify a partner organization and negotiate and execute a contract with the identified organization to assist with effective and efficient administration of the grant.
Do I have a second? It has been moved by Dr. Jensen and seconded by Mr. Davis that the Board of Trustees accept the proposed grant funds in the amount of $336,900 from the Hurricane Harvey Relief Fund managed by the Greater Houston Community Foundation, and authorize the superintendent of schools to identify a partner organization and negotiate and execute a contract with the identified organization to assist with effective and efficient administration of the grant. Is there any discussion?
Well, I have a question. I wanted to know if someone can explain to me why we're seeking to
Partner.
partner with another organization.
So one of it will talk a little bit with Ann as well. So part of it is also giving out the funds, and so we don't want to be responsible for distribution of funds, having to write checks from a district account. Ann, you want to talk to us a little bit about that, our discussion?
Yes. So the process in the district's accounts payable department, we run a check run once a week, and we're paying all of our vendors, utility bills, things of that nature. These funds will need to be distributed on a very quick basis, possibly daily. And so we need to have the ability for someone to handwrite a check on demand. And that's not a capability that we have within our financial services department. And so having a partner that's a smaller organization that's able to write those checks on demand and turn them over to whomever the recipient is a lot easier and more efficient and a better use of another organization's time than within the district. So for our team to be able to absorb this type of event, we would probably need someone in addition to a case manager, but someone just to write checks and process the paperwork. And so that's why we were looking for an outside organization that could handle that day-to-day demand and work hand-in-hand with that case manager and not try to infuse that into the accounts payable process within the district.
For example, there are organizations within our community, one of which whom we work with through Tri-Club and other areas, NAM. NAM does this on a daily basis. This is their role to do that, and so we would partner with them, perhaps, if they wanted to, or other organizations like that, to come into an alignment with us based upon the stipulation of the grant, and this is something they do for this community anyway.
So would they be decision makers?
We would be the decision maker. We're hiring the individual. We're hiring the individual. It would be a Spring ISD employee. There would be ones that would help facilitate the process. So, for example, it's not just giving people money for their bills or clothing. They also have counseling services. And so we would look at what other services they have within their organization and the services that we can provide through the grant. And then that would form a partnership that they could get even more services than the grant even provides.
And the guidelines are already established as to how the funds will be distributed. The guidelines were established when the grant was written.
Correct.
So they would have,
be changed.
whichever organization we partner with would still follow those already predetermined established guidelines.
And another partner organization could be the foundation. Talking with them, it kind of depends upon how many of those do they want to do with us.
Do we send out an RFQ for this, or how do we decide?
No, so it's not an RFQ in terms of developing who a partnership is. It's us looking at our community and partnerships that we have and seeing which one fits. It's not one that you would have to do an RFQ for a partnership.
How much of the funds do we anticipate will go towards the administration?
We had budgeted around $65,000 for a position that would help manage the funds. Yes,
The case manager.
yes, ma'am.
In addition to partnership?
That would come out of the $336,000. The person to administer the funds would come out of those funds.
My only follow-up to that is just the reporting mechanism back to us periodically or at some point.
Yeah, in addition to reporting to you all, the grant requires us to report to them as well. So there's a lot of checks and balances in terms of receiving the funds. Matter of fact, we haven't received them yet. They're waiting for the partnership and that approval process to go through. Once we've done that, then we'll have a regular reporting cycle back to them as well in terms of how funds are being used, how much funds are left, then where we are within that process.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Our next item is an emergency addition to the agenda, added pursuant to the Texas Government Code Section 551.045 due to severe weather and dangerous conditions. For this item, I would like to recognize our Chief of Staff, Julie Hill.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I was just looking at the agenda. I wanted to make sure we skipped over the consent agenda. So, do we want to do that after this, or do we want the consent agenda items?
So sorry, I did not mean to skip over that. I turned my page too fast. So I will go back first. Our next item is the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve and adopt all of the items listed on the consent agenda.
Madam President, I move the Board of Trustees approve and adopt all the items listed on the consent agenda.
It's been moved by Mr. Davis and second by Mr. Grant that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt all of the items listed on the consent agenda. Any questions? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Now we get to hear from Dr. Hill.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I'm not going to be long because we have precedent for this emergency item. As you recall, during Hurricane Harvey, we actually had an emergency meeting that we held by audio. And so we tuned in at that time because there was some very urgent business that we needed the assistance of the board for in order to make sure that we met the needs of our employees and our students. So once again, this evening, we bring to you a resolution that we ask you to pass that relates to our most recent winter freeze days. And so we're asking the board tonight to pass a resolution that would authorize the administration to pay employees for January 16th and 17th, the 2 days that we've just missed because of the winter freeze and not being able to conduct school at that time. We're further asking the board to authorize the administration to compensate those employees who had to work, our police officers specifically who are 24/7, who even though the storm was going on, the winter freeze, they still were here out protecting and keeping our district safe and secure. And finally, we are asking that the Board of Trustees would authorize the superintendent of schools to make any changes that need to be made to our district calendar and to authorize him to obtain any waivers that are needed from the Texas Education Agency in order for us to ensure that our students receive the minutes that are required by state law in terms of instruction.
Thank
And
you,
I
Ms.
believe you
Grant.
have a copy of the resolution in front of you.
Yes, we do. Thank you. I will now entertain a motion that the Board of Trustees adopt the resolution delegating authority to the superintendent of schools to pay employees for work days missed as a result of Spring Independent School District's closure, and to authorize the superintendent of schools to modify the instructional calendar and seek any and all related waivers from the Texas Commissioner of Education.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Mr. Rand and second by Ms. Gonzalez that the Board of Trustees adopt the resolution delegating authority to the superintendent of schools to pay employees for work days missed as a result of Spring Independent School District's closure, and to authorize the superintendent of schools to modify the instructional calendar and seek any and all related waivers from the Texas Commissioner of Education. Is there any discussion?
Just want to thank those that work during those times, and our police officers that kept the district safe, as well as our maintenance folks that were out wrapping pipes and making sure that we didn't receive any damage. I'd just kind of like to go on the record that the board appreciates their
I
work.
think that includes our superintendent, as I understand.
And I'm sure the cabinet may have been around too, so I just want to say thank you.
All.
Mark Miranda as well, yeah.
Okay. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Again, thank you, and we give you a round of applause.
Didn't have any damage.
Next is the public participation portion of our meeting. Chief Hill, do we have anyone registered to speak under public participation?
No, Madam President, we do not.
Looking for 'em. Okay. The board will now recess this open session and convene in a closed meeting in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.071, for the purpose of a private consultation with the board's attorney on any and all subjects or matters authorized. Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.072, for the purpose of discussing the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.074, for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear complaints or charges against a public officer or employee. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussions in the closed meeting will take place after the board reconvenes in open session. The time is now 9:35 p.m.
Board meeting.
4:30.
We will now reconvene and resume the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. The time is now 11:02
It's late.
p.m. We will now address the items discussed during closed session. Are there any motions?
I move that the board authorize the superintendent to give written notice to Samia L. Tooney that a proposed action to terminate her probationary contract is pending before the Board of Trustees.
Have a second? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Are there any other motions?
I move that the board authorize the superintendent to give written notice to Celia Caldera Zadowski that a proposed action to terminate her term contract is pending before the Board of Trustees.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Are there any other motions?
Madam President, I move that the board render a final order to terminate the contract of Kyle Francis and authorize the superintendent to notify the employee of the action taken by the board.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion carries unanimously. Are there any other motions?
Madam President, I move the board approve the superintendent's recommendation to terminate the contract of Melissa Sayou upon finding that she failed to perform her contract without good cause, and authorize the superintendent to notify the employee of the proposed termination pursuant to Chapter 21 of the Texas Education Code. I further move that the board authorize the superintendent to notify the State Board of Education certification that the employee failed to perform her contract without good cause, and of the action taken by the board.
Second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Are there any other motions?
Madam President, I move that the board approve the settlement agreement in the matter involving student N. Hernandez according to the terms discussed in closed session, that the board authorize the superintendent to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Who was the second on that?
John, yeah. I started to give you the name, but it wasn't in my script. I was skipping to the script. I wanted to give you the name, so
We got them all.
I move with adjourn.
Are there any other motions?
I I move to
Hearing
adjourn.
none, there are no other motions on tonight's agenda, so I will now entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. It's been moved by Ms. Durant and second by Dr. Jensen that the Board of Trustees adjourn this meeting. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. There are no further business. This meeting is officially adjourned at 11:06.